Are you ready to take your mindset to an even higher level on and off the mat? Then you're ready for the BJJ Mental Coach Podcast, where jiu-jitsu practitioners open their minds to new ideas and concepts about personal development, entrepreneurship, jiu-jitsu, and life. Our mission is to inspire, impact, and/or improve your life in some way to support you during your consistent pursuit of becoming the best version of yourself, personally and professionally. It's time to go beyond the mat with the host of the BJJ Mental Coach Podcast, Gustavo Dantas.
Welcome to the BJJ Mental Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Gustavo Dantas, and today you have Henry Akins. Henry has been training jiu-jitsu since 1995 with Master Rickson Gracie, and he got his black belt in 2004, becoming the third American to receive a black belt under Master Rickson. He is currently sharing his knowledge via his website, Hidden Jiu-Jitsu, and his YouTube channel, Hidden Jiu-Jitsu, where he recently started Mat Chats, in which Henry hopes to share with viewers the soul of Jiu-Jitsu. Henry, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so you're saying that you've been living in Las Vegas. We're recording this in July of 2021. So you've been living there. That was last year, you said, in 2020, right?
Yeah, I think it was the summer of 2019. So right before
kind
of the pandemic. Yeah, which was, we were really fortunate to just move out here. The cost of living is so much cheaper than Santa Monica. And so especially with the world going crazy, everything going crazy and riots and stuff breaking out, looking back now, it was definitely the right choice and really, really fortunate we made that move at the right time.
And it's crazy that I mentioned to you that I moved to the US. I went to Vegas. I stayed for about 2 years in 1999 with John Lewis. And back then, I believe there were 2, maybe 3 schools in the whole valley. It's just crazy. And now it's like everywhere, right?
It's crazy, man. There's so many schools because I'm still, everything was shut down for the last year and a half. So I wasn't really leaving the house much, driving around. But now that things are open back up, driving around, just going places, I see jiu-jitsu schools all over the place. I'm like, man, I wonder who's teaching there. I wonder who's teaching there. It's crazy how much it's grown, and back in the day, the jiu-jitsu community was so small, you knew everybody.
Yeah.
Right. You knew, that's that person's school. That's that person's school. And now there's so many black belts. The community's just grown so much. It's pretty awesome to see.
Yeah, it's interesting. Back in the day, I used to have a student that's moving to a certain state. They tell me the state. It'll be like, check out this person now. I say, man, I don't know. Just Google, get the top 3 that that is that's closest by. Send me, and maybe I know. Chances are it'd be like I've never heard, but sometimes like, oh, okay, this is affiliated with someone, but I barely know.
Yeah, so, that's me too. I'm like an affiliate of an affiliate, or who they got their black belt from, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, so tell us how martial arts got into your life. Did you train? Did you have a chance to train anything before you got to train jiu-jitsu? So start from there. Yeah.
I always loved martial arts since I was growing up as a kid. My mom used to leave me at home on the weekends, and we'd watch, me and my brothers. I had 2 brothers, an older brother, a younger brother. We'd sit at home and watch Kung Fu theater all day, and it'd be cool just to watch all these guys fighting. And so in high school, I started doing Taekwondo when I was 14 and was really, really committed, really, really dedicated to that. But I grew up in Oklahoma. And Oklahoma is a huge wrestling state. And so just seeing fights happen at school and seeing how effective wrestling was, I always wanted to find a martial art that was grappling based, because I started to see and understand how effective grappling was, especially in one-on-one fights. And so that's what kind of led me to jiu-jitsu. Before the UFC, I saw an old grainy VHS tape, before the first UFC, old grainy VHS tape of Gracie in action. I don't even know if people have even, the modern people have even seen those, but that was life-changing for me. Watching Gracie in action 1 and 2, it was like on a VHS tape, and it was a copy of a copy of a copy. So it was really grainy. Someone dubbed it and then handed it to someone else who dubbed it. And man, I must have watched those tapes probably 10, 15 times. And then all of a sudden, you know, they announced that the UFC and Royce Gracie was going to be fighting. And I was like, okay, I knew right away. I was like, this guy's going to win the whole thing. And so, yeah, that's kind of what got me into jiu-jitsu, is just growing up in Oklahoma and just, you know, wanting to find a martial art. I always loved martial arts, but I wanted to find a martial art that was grappling based.
Yeah, it's so crazy to see. Like I remember, I started training in 1989, so it was before UFC and before the big challenge in Rio in 1981, because I felt that was around that time the jiu-jitsu started really, because jiu-jitsu wasn't as popular as people think. That was almost like a best kept secret in a way. It wasn't like media and everyone knew, even if you're a Brazilian. You know, 91 after the Vale Tudo Jiu-Jitsu Luta Livre really got, yes, because it showed a global famous channel in Brazil. And that recording, I watched that way more than 15 times. And I mean, like, oh my God, I got, you know, I still have the tape, is all jacked up, you know, it doesn't play well. But that thing, I remember that it was by my house. I tried to get in into the venue. I couldn't get in. It was just completely sold out. And then at the end of the night, they showed us the fights, you know, the 3 fights. And next day, you started to, like, people, like, you know, news, and people started to get more. And then 93, when happened with Royce, and that was really cool, that when the word went around, like, hey, Royce going to be fighting this. And it took like a couple weeks until people even find out the results, you know, like what happened, they don't know. And then a few weeks later, the same thing, the VHS came around, and the copy of the copy of the copy, you know, it started going around, and everything started to change. So in 95, you went to LA. That's when you started training.
Right. 94, I went to LA, and I was just on, it was like a spring break, or it was, you know, during a break from school. And I specifically went to find Rickson to try to train at the school. So I was able to find it. It was a little bit of a difficult to find it, because back then there was no internet, right? You're looking through the yellow pages, and I don't even remember if their name was in the yellow pages or not. We ended up calling the Torrance Academy. And at the time, Rickson had just split off and started his own school. And so when I called the Torrance Academy, they said they didn't know of anybody named Rickson. So I ended up finding the school, trained there for a week. And, you know, like most people's experience in jiu-jitsu, I was working out all the time. I thought I was pretty tough. You know, very physical. And I got my butt kicked so bad. I got just destroyed for the whole week, worse than I've ever been before in my life. And at the end of the week, I said, this is it. I found it, and this is what I need to do. And I, you know, just started putting a plan into action of how I was going to move out to LA to be able to train.
So back then, how was it? If you try, it's tough for you to go back, you know, to like a day one, or because you just leave trying to figure like what just happened, you know. So how was back then? Was intense? Or it was kind of like just a lot of rolling and just getting submitted, or you just let it practice?
I'll tell moves? You, the first time I walked into the school, there were 2 purple belts training, and I saw one guy get put to sleep unconscious. And then, you know, they lift the legs, they lift his ankles up and start shaking the legs, trying to get blood flow back. And I looked at my friend, so I went there with a good buddy of mine. We went out on spring break together to train, and I looked at him, and I'm like, we're in the right place, you know, like we found it, right? But back then, yeah, the training was much more physical. You know, it was much more physical. It was much harder. The mindset for training was much different too, because a lot of people don't realize back then jiu-jitsu was still trying to prove itself, right? And so we were training when I started training. So I started training the summer of 95. Back then, we would train no gi all summer. There wasn't as much competitions and tournaments as there is now. And so during the summers, we would take the gis off and we would train with strikes. And the mindset was always, we have to train jiu-jitsu to see if we can beat all the other martial arts. So that was kind of the mindset back then. And it was very, very physical. It was very tough, because we were training for fighting.
I had the opportunity to interview Master Fabio Gurgel, for people don't know, one of the head coaches and founders of Alliance.
Mhm.
And he used a terminology that I found so accurate. It said, like, if anyone that trains still have jiu-jitsu in their lives, not teach or anything, but you still train jiu-jitsu, and you train in the 90s, you're part of the select group of the survivors. You know what I mean? Because most people come in and be like, oh, screw that, like that's no, because you get beat up. And that's, like you said, that's the vibe it was back then. So if you really like start in the 90s and kept doing, you were one of the survivors, because it was, at least in Brazil, everything, especially when 93, that's when tournaments start to get, when they had the first Brazilian nationals, and then 94, the CBJJ was founded. But then everything was tournaments. Everything was just training for tournaments, compete. So it was super intense. So whether you're in class, whether you want to compete or not, you're in class, you're competing in this and that. And then there's the turnover was so big, because people could just, it's not like today, okay, we have a fundamentals class. There's no such a thing. Here's a gi, and go.
So you were basically thrown into the wolves.
Yeah.
Yep. And the training was very intense, very hard. And I remember going to Brazil, like 90, when was it? 96, 97. And, all the guys had patches all over their gis, sponsors everywhere. So I remember how big it had gotten in Brazil, and it was so tournament based, competitions all the time.
So when was a time that you realized, what, I think I'm going to pursue this here, and this going to pursue us even professionally?
Well, I had kind of made that decision when I moved to LA, right? I was still going to school at the time, but I knew that that's what I wanted to dedicate myself to. I left my family, left all my friends, left my girlfriend behind, to be able to go train. And so, my dad told me a long time ago, he said, for your career, in life, either figure out something that you love to do, and that way, if you make money in it, that's just a bonus, you're happy, or figure out something where you're going to make a ton of money, and that way you have the time to do the things that you love. And so I figured, I love doing jiu-jitsu, I love training, and so hopefully one day I'll be able to make a career out of it. So that was kind of always the thought, like, let me just train, let me get as good as I can, and hopefully one day, I'll be able to make some money doing it. And back then, just being a young kid, I lived very modestly. We were living in a 3-bedroom apartment. I had, like, at any given time 4 or 5 roommates, living in LA, because it was so expensive. So I was very, very content, not making very much money at all. I was living, very modestly, and just training all day.
And when the idea came for you to start branding Hidden Jiu-Jitsu, the concept, can you expand on the concept for us?
Yeah, sure. So it was around probably 2000, I think 2013 or 2014. I had already started teaching seminars at different schools. I started traveling, teaching seminars. And what I noticed was that, I was very kind of naive in thinking that the jiu-jitsu that I was learning from Rickson was the same jiu-jitsu that's being taught everywhere else, because I had gone from white belt to black belt under Rickson. I never trained with anybody else. And back then, as you know, it was kind of really frowned upon to go train at other schools. I had friends at all these other schools, but I was not really, I don't want to say not allowed, but it was very frowned upon to go train. We had that term creonchi, right, which means traitor. And so I was just very, very naive, thinking that, man, everybody's learning the basics and the fundamentals the same way I am. And as I started traveling around teaching, what I started to realize is, wow, man, there are very, very different styles of jiu-jitsu and very different ways of applying and teaching the basics and the fundamentals. And I think one of the things now that looking back, I realize is that that's the reason why Rickson was so good, is because of the little details in the techniques that he does differently. And so that's really what hidden jiu-jitsu is about. Hidden jiu-jitsu is really about teaching the little subtleties in jiu-jitsu that make it work like magic. You know, Rickson was such an innovator. He was like a jiu-jitsu scientist. You know, all of his energy, all of his focus, all of his time went into thinking about and training jiu-jitsu to be able to get to the level that he was. And so he changed and adapted so much of jiu-jitsu. You know, he made so many improvements to the techniques himself. I saw, you know, even during the 15 years I was training, he was constantly evolving the techniques, constantly improving the technique, constantly seeing how he can do things better, constantly seeing, oh, you know, if I do it this way, the guy can get out. So let me see how I can change the technique so now they can't use this escape or that escape, right? Or change the technique so it uses less energy or less strength. Or how do we incorporate the body more into the movement instead of using strength? So he was constantly innovating. And so it was really those kind of little details that I felt made his jiu-jitsu so special, and jiu-jitsu in general, right? I think the first time a lot of people feel jiu-jitsu, it feels like magic to them. So it's really teaching people those details, those kind of, that I say, hidden details, because a lot of times if it's not really pointed out, it's very difficult to see the little nuances. Sometimes like just moving your elbow or your arm an inch or 2 inches makes a difference between whether you can apply a technique or you can't, or whether it feels easy or it requires a lot of strength.
So what is one of your favorite concepts to share, regardless of the belt? You're going to a seminar, there's white belts, there's black belts. So what is one concept that you're very passionate about sharing?
One of the biggest ones is just weight distribution, understanding how to use your weight effectively. Especially nowadays, I think guys are so athletic. What you see a lot in jiu-jitsu is a ton of movement, which requires a lot of athleticism, a lot of strength, a lot of endurance, you know? And that was, I think a lot of people say that was one of Rickson's biggest contributions to jiu-jitsu, is understanding how to use his weight effectively. So with weight distribution, what it allows you to do is it allows you to create pressure on your opponent without using strength. And when you understand how to use your weight distribution, what happens is it slows people down. It slows down the movement, and it makes it so that every time your opponent wants to move, they have to move more of your weight. So every movement becomes harder for them. So it's like almost like swimming in quicksand, right? And so that just that one concept in itself has a dramatic effect on people's ability to move, the speed at which they move, and how quickly they get tired. And as you know, all of the best fighters in the world, what happens to all of them, as soon as they start to get tired, their performance level drops, right? And so that's what it does. That's one of the things I share this story all the time, but it was around 2000. Rickson was about 40 years old. He hadn't trained in 9 months. He had a groin injury. He was getting ready to compete in the Coliseum, and he was trying to let his groin rest and heal up so that he could fight. And we had a world champion come in, 2-time world champion come in, and trained with Rickson. Rickson came in and taught the class. He wasn't going to train that night. He came in and taught the class, and there was about 40 of us there on the mats. And at the end of the class, he puts everyone to train, and the champion asked Rickson if he wanted to train. So they started training, and the mat cleared off. And so they're going back and forth, at a really fast pace. And after a few minutes, Rickson catches him with an arm lock, and then they start going again. And after a couple more minutes, he tapped. And I was like, what happened? And I was asking my buddy that we were sitting against the wall, and I asked him, I said, hey, did you see what he caught him with? And he's like, no, I didn't see it. So after the training, I went up and asked Rickson, I said, hey, Hicks, I didn't see, what did you catch him with that last time? He said, oh, he tapped to the pressure. And I was like, what? He was like, yeah, he tapped to pressure. He said, I knew he was going to come at me hard, and I haven't trained in 9 months, and my groins hurt. So I just made him carry my weight the whole time. And once he started getting tired, I just kept the pressure on him, and that's what did it. So That's the other thing with understanding weight distribution and pressure. You can make it very difficult for your opponent to breathe, which is like it's a form of asphyxiation, you know? So that was a huge turning point in my jiu-jitsu career. I was like, wow, I have to learn how to do this. I have to learn, especially as we get older and our physicality decreases. If you still know how to use your weight, a lot of times our metabolism slows down and weight goes up, right? So if you know how to use your weight, if you understand how to use weight distribution, you can kind of level out the playing field. So the guys that are really fast, really athletic, you let them move, but you use your weight, make them carry your weight, then they get tired much quicker.
What are some of the practitioners that have you noticed, or maybe you have a train with, besides, of course, Rickson? Could it be maybe you didn't train, but observing and studying? What's some names that maybe come to your mind as far as like keeping that basic, the solid foundation, weight distribution? Some of the concepts that you learn, it would be like, I can see this being applied there. Anyone that comes to your mind?
Hodger, I think, is a great example. You know, he's so good at the fundamentals, so good at the basics. He's so good at pressure and using his weight. He's kind of one of the main guys that I always think of. I think Saulo Ribeiro, who spent quite a bit of time training with Rickson. He's an absolute beast, and you know, his ability to create and put pressure to is, you know, insane, legendary. So I think those guys are, you know, two of the guys that I kind of saw as I was coming up that were really applying those principles.
Now let's talk a little bit about business. And it's interesting because starting in the 90s, it's not like someone start right now and they see people with schools and affiliations and online sites and, you know, and gear. There's so many things you can capitalize on in entrepreneurship and jiu-jitsu. But in the 90s, of course, that is not around. So around what time in your journey, it kind of like click, you know, the entrepreneurial side of it? Like now, of course, you have, all the YouTube and platforms and stuff. But when did you notice, like, okay, it's time to step up my entrepreneurial game?
Yeah, man. In 2010 is when I kind of made the transition to opening up my own school. And what had happened was I had been teaching for Rickson for 10 years. And in 2008, 2009, Rickson had moved back to Brazil, and Krohn wanted to take over the school. So I had, for all those years while I was teaching jiu-jitsu at Rickson's, I was also working in nightclubs because that was just a schedule. I'd been working at nightclubs for, probably about 15 years, just doing security and bouncing. And that was just a schedule that worked really well with my training, where, I could train all day and then I would go in at night and work and to make money. And so I was 36 at the time, and I said, you know what, I'm getting closer to 40, and it's probably time for me to make the transition. I didn't want to work at nights anymore, and it's a little bit of a rough schedule. Yeah. Because you don't get home till 3 or 4 in the morning. You go to sleep and then you wake up late. So I decided, it was time for me to open up my own school. And so I did that in 2010. I started a gym called Dynamics Martial Arts with a good friend of mine, Anthony Hardonk, who is a K1 fighter, fought in K1 and then fought in the UFC. And another friend of mine, Vladimir Matyushenko, who is a 6-time Soviet national champion for wrestling. He also fought many years in the UFC and fought, in other events, Bellator, and, so I opened up the school with those guys. And around that same time, I got a call from a guy who was a friend of mine now, a guy named Scott Smith, who has a school in Kentucky, and he's under Pedro Sauer. So what happened was there was a lot of guys that were basically had joined Pedro Sauer's association because at that time, Rickson had an association back in the day, but it kind of fell apart after his son passed away. So a lot of people were going underneath Pedro. A lot of the guys that were underneath Pedro were really looking to learn Rickson's jiu-jitsu. So the guy reached out to me, had heard that I understand and know and teach Rickson's jiu-jitsu pretty well. I'd been teaching at his school for 10 years. And so asked me to come out and do a seminar. And that's kind of where I started really going out and teaching seminars. I taught at his school. He was absolutely blown away by what I showed him. And he was already, I think, a first degree or second degree black belt. He was blown away. And he invited me to come back out 6 months later. And when I came back out 6 months later, he invited a bunch of other black belts. He's like, you guys got to check this out. Got to see this, what he's teaching. So that's kind of how my seminar things got started. It was kind of very just word of mouth. You know, those black belts that showed up to the next seminar after I taught there, they're like, oh man, I have a school here. I have a school here. You got to come out to my school and teach. So after I started teaching these seminars, I was like, wow, man, this is really crazy, because I was teaching stuff like an Americana, how to maintain the mount, how to keep posture in the guard, how to do a scissor sweep. I was teaching these very, you know, I call them white belt techniques, right? These are techniques that we all learn as a white belt, but there were little nuances that these guys that have been doing jiu-jitsu for 15 years had never seen before. And it made the world of difference to them. They were actually able to appreciate it more than the lower belts, because they had been doing it a different way for so long. And as soon as I showed them these little details, they're like, oh, that's why it never works. Or that's why the guys can defend it so easier. So it made a huge impact for them. And so I started teaching these seminars. And at that time, Rickson wasn't teaching any longer. He didn't have a school, and he was living back in Brazil. He wasn't doing any seminars. He wasn't doing anything. And I was thinking, man, all of this jiu-jitsu that I learned is going to be lost if I don't expose it to a bigger audience. So in 2013, 2014, that's when I decided to start Hidden Jiu-Jitsu, the online site, to be able to really just share his jiu-jitsu with the world, because so many people were looking for it. You know, so many people had heard the legends of how good he was. And it's not just because of his athleticism. The way that his technique is different than everybody else's.
Mm-hmm. Now, still talking about business. So let's say 2013, 14, developing the website and traveling, doing all that stuff. So what one of the biggest struggles and difficulties that you went through, like running your business, that you had no idea before, besides the technical aspect, and it's always evolving? So what are some of the difficulties that you found, and how did you overcome?
Gosh, I mean, one of the biggest difficulties, I think, in starting a school that, you know, I didn't realize at all. I was under the assumption that if you're a good teacher, you know, and you know you're good at teaching jiu-jitsu, you're going to be able to have a successful school, right? Yep. And that is not it at all, right? You have to be a good business person to be able to have a successful school. And so I really had to throw myself and start learning really business, marketing, sales, which for me is really difficult for me. I don't tend to like that. And so even though I started having to learn it, what I also tried to seek out is someone that enjoyed that and understood that really well and brought them into the business. And, you know, I was happy to give them a share. So we've always had kind of a business manager, mm-hmm. so that I can focus on doing what I love. Because at the end of the day, that was what was really important for me, that I love what I do. You know, I didn't want to focus my energy and commit my energy into doing stuff, even though, like, understanding the marketing and sales and student retention, that stuff is crucial for a business, but that's not really what I enjoyed. And so that was your
strength.
Yeah. So that was a huge thing, you know, just really understanding, like, we struggled for a good, I mean, when I started my school, I didn't get paid for a year. I didn't take a salary for a year. You know, the only thing I was getting was paid for my privates, but from the group classes, I never made any money for the first year. just to get the business going and just to start off. And so as I started learning more about it, talking more about it, going to different courses about how to run a martial arts school, you really learn that, man, all of these other elements, there's so many different aspects that are really, really important.
So we have a lot of people who are listening. I mean, it's dedicated to entrepreneurs, business owners, high performers, and of course, you have people that they're not, but they enjoy the content. So now, since we have a lot of people who are in transition, just starting their business, starting their entrepreneurial journey, so what kind of piece of advice, maybe a content, anything that for someone who's starting, maybe starting a jiu-jitsu school, or starting maybe an online project, like a concept that it works regardless, what comes to your mind when you think about a content for someone that's starting entrepreneurship?
Gosh, you know what? For me, what I've really tried to do is what made me passionate about jiu-jitsu was the teaching and the training first. And then I really started to love teaching. I really started to love giving back and sharing, sharing what I've learned. And a big part of my success comes from my passion, being still passionate about what I do. And so for me, what I've really learned to do is focus on doing what I love. So for example, I have a couple different businesses. I do private lessons, right? Seminars all over the world. And then I do camps also. So I do retreats. Usually I do 2 to 3 a year. And then I do my website. And with the website, I have a business partner that handles all of the back end stuff, handles all the customer service, sees it. So I get to focus on just producing the content I get to focus on teaching. And that's the same thing with all my other businesses, the seminars. I get to focus on just showing up and teaching. At the camps, I have someone else that helps arrange everything and organize everything so I can do what I love. I show up and teach. And that's what really allows me to stay motivated and inspired, is finding good people around me that can handle the other responsibilities, because it's so difficult to do it all by yourself, right? It's very difficult for anyone to have success by themselves. You need to have good people around you that you trust to be able to help.
Mm-hmm. And what did you say is one habit that you have that you practice daily that is a big part of your life, helps you in everything, helps in jiu-jitsu, helps in business, something to practice? It doesn't have to be anything crazy, just simple habits, just like, yeah, I just do this every day.
Simple habits. Gosh,
like, for example, when you say a habit, one habit that I can even say, it's like sleeping, and people are like, oh, come on, sleep. Like, no. There's times in my life that I was not aware of my sleep as much as I should. You end up putting a lot of hours, you got a project, you get excited, next thing you're working hours, you go to bed late, wake up early, and then you're dragging. So it became a habit for me to be like, all right, this is your cutoff, like by this time you need to go to bed, because you know that like after that you're gonna drag the next day, it's not going to be as efficient. So this is like, is sleeping as a habit? Well, like controlling the hours, how you sleep, it's going to affect everything you do.
Yeah. When you asked me that question, one of the first things that came to mind was just that, especially recently, I've been trying to teach myself not to take things so seriously, not to make such a big deal out of things, because it's so easy for me. I'm a perfectionist and I tend to stress myself out a lot. I tend to put a lot of pressure on myself. And at the end of the day, what I'm constantly reminding myself is like, hey, just do this. And if I mess up, it can be fixed, and everything can be, I think life is a constant learning process. Yeah. And it's a journey, and it doesn't have to be perfect on day one. Right. So that was for me, man, I always wanted everything to be perfect. I always wanted to do the best at whatever it is I was doing. And I would get really frustrated and upset. And what I realized is that was affecting my happiness. Mm-hmm. And so learning not to do what I love creates so much stress in my life. Right.
Got it.
So that's
Eh,
it.
Now, changing subjects. Do you have, well, for sure you do. See if you remember any interesting stories of that you've watched Hickson maybe training or performing, or it could be something funny, could it be something shocking, like things that you've seen, you're like, wow, just got your attention somehow.
Yeah, I mean, well, you mentioned Fabio Gurgel earlier, right?
Hmm.
So the first time I saw Hickson training with Fabio Gurgel, um, gosh, I think Fabio was just 25 at the time. He was already a multiple-time world champion, and he came down. I think he was getting ready to fight. Was it Mark Kerr or is it Tom Erickson? It was one of those guys, big wrestlers. Um, you know, just seeing Hickson training with Fabio, and literally he was, and Fabio even mentions this. I wouldn't say it if Fabio hadn't mentioned it, but he was teaching Fabio like he was a white belt almost. He was able to do stuff to him. Like that was the first time I ever got an idea, because everyone had been talking about Fabio Gurgel's amazing. Like he's, the world champion, current world champion. He's destroying everybody. Like he's one of the best guys in the world. And then to see Hickson train with him and just completely kind of do to him like what I felt like a black belt does to white belts, that was really kind of showed me, wow, there's just levels to the game. There's black belts and then there's Hickson. There's the black belts, the number one guy, the two guy, and then there's like Hickson's all the way up here. That was kind of one of the first times I really saw the difference in level between just the world champions and Hickson, who was just on a different level. And I when I tell that story, it's funny because it's so hard for people to imagine. It's so hard for people because there's no way he could be that good. There's no way. And man, I was just so blessed that I got to see it time and time and time again. And every time I thought, oh my gosh, this guy's coming in here to train, he's going to give Hickson a hard time, or this is going to be a good. And I would just see Hickson tap him out 4 or 5 times in 5 minutes. I would just be like, oh my gosh, shocking how deep the pool goes, how high of a level you can achieve. And so that was really inspirational for me, knowing that, man, you can get to that level. It's humanly possible to get to that level. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I had opportunity to interview Fabio, and late 90s I had to go to São Paulo with someone for like a sponsorship thing, and I ended up meeting him for the first time to sit down. And then the person was with me was asking, because it was fairly recent, a few years I think they had trained with him. So he was asking Fabio like, hey, how was it? And then he told him that, like definitely got the worst of it. And then they're like, oh, come on, man, like tell us, like we're really trying. I was like, dude, do you think I would be bragging here that I got submitted? Is that something that, anyone can say like, oh yeah, like if I'm sharing it's because it happened. It's not because I'm trying to impress someone saying that, I got submitted a bunch of times, so it's cool statement. And I interviewed Pedro Sauer. He talked about too, how it was impressive to be able to see that.
Well, that's what's interesting. All of the best guys in the world that have had the opportunity to train with Hickson kind of have very similar stories, right? Of how they got completely dominated, how they felt like a white belt, how they felt like they didn't know jiu-jitsu at all. It's all very similar what they share. And it's a lot of times just the people that haven't had that experience that are really doubtful of it. But when you have guys like Fabio Gurgel, Saulo, Shanji, Fabio Leopoldo, Master Pedro Sauer, who was it that came out? Paulo Filio, right? It came out and said, so, put something in a magazine about how he never had any, and this was when Hickson was already in his 50s. He said he'd never had anyone do what Hickson did to him. So when you have all these guys that have had that experience and they're saying the same thing, it kind of just reinforces like what I saw, because people are just in disbelief when I tell them the stories.
Mm-hmm. What is one of the best piece of advice that you got from Hickson, that on and off the mat, it doesn't matter, anything that has stuck with you?
Gosh, there's so many things that, what's interesting, there's so many things that he said just in passing that I think were insignificant to him,
Yeah.
that had a tremendous impact on me. You know, when I heard it, it was just like resonated, and it all of a sudden had a huge mental shift. Like that experience of using his weight, when he shared with me, oh, I was just using my weight and making it heavy. That completely changed the trajectory of my jujitsu. After that, I spent like 12, 13 years just completely dedicated to understanding and learning how to use weight distribution from all the different positions, where to shift your weight, how to place your weight, to make it hard for people to move, to make it difficult for people to do things. You know, he told me one time, guard passing. I was doing a training. I was a brown belt at the time, and I was training with my friend that was a purple belt. Tall, lanky guy, has a really good open guard, you know, and I was 5 minutes, I was trying to pass his guard, and I was exhausted by the end of it. And I couldn't pass his guard. And Hickson said to me, Henry, guard passing is just weight distribution and angles. And I was like, what the heck does he mean, weight? And then he went and passed his guard like 5 times in a row in like a minute and a half. Passed his guard 5 times, passed his guard, went back, passed his guard again, all different ways, right? But he just made it look so easy. And so that was a huge epiphany for me. Like, okay, what does he mean by guard passing is just weight distribution and angles? And so I spent years and years and years trying to understand that concept and that idea. So those are 2 really, really huge things, you know. Also, you know, always telling me, learn to relax, learn to not use strength, learn to train like you're an old person. So I really tried to take that to heart and try to be as relaxed and effortless as possible. And that I found has just makes such a dramatic impact, not just in your energy conservation, but the ability for other people to control you. So, you know, I talk about that a lot in my videos. The more you learn to relax, the harder it is for someone to control you. Meaning that a lot of times what people are trying to do in jiu-jitsu is they're trying to move or manipulate your body, right? They're trying to push you or move or manipulate you. So if you become tense and rigid, like a statue, if they move one part of you, they can move all of you, right? So if I grab your hand and I pull you, your whole body moves. If I grab your leg and I pull you and you're stiff and rigid, your whole body moves. But if you become relaxed, they move your arm moves, but it doesn't affect the rest of your body. And so just that principle too made a huge impact on, you know, on people's ability to control me.
Very cool. Let's talk about his mindset. Did you notice shift in his mindset when he's getting ready for a competition, for a fight? What besides, I know that he's huge in breathing, so I guarantee that's part of his kind of like mindset preparation and breathing and stuff. Anything that you can say about that you notice from his competition mindset?
Just, you know, you would see him ramp up his level of intensity, like just him being very like, if you've ever looked into his eyes when he's like fighting, that look that you see, you can just see a shift in seriousness. And that's something he always said. He goes, every time I go to fight, I'm prepared to die, you know? And so that's how serious he took his training for fighting.
Yeah. What about now, back to a little bit of the business? What piece of advice would you give to the younger Henry when you started to kind of do your website and start kind of, you know, really invest in the entrepreneurial side of it? Not that you want anything different, right? Everything happens the way it needs to happen. But if you look back, it could give a little suggestion, be like, hey, watch out for this. Because it's kind of like a good one for anyone that is starting entrepreneurship. But it's just looking at your journey and be like, if I knew that before, that would be pretty handy or whatever. What do you think?
I mean, one of the main things I would tell myself is just everything's going to work out, right? When I first dedicated myself to teaching, there were very few opportunities. You know, you didn't see, when I first started doing jiu-jitsu, you didn't see guys making lots of money having schools. You didn't see that. So that was always something I was always stressed out about, you know. Man, am I going to be able to make a career? Am I ever going to be able to buy a house? Am I going to be able to make a good living? Am I going to be able to provide for a family doing jiu-jitsu? And it was a huge stress for me. And now I would just tell myself, man, it's all going to work out. It's all, just keep doing what you love and things will work out.
Right on. Are you into books, audiobooks, or podcasts or something? What
Yeah,
kind of books do you like to read?
I love reading.
Yeah. Well, a little bit of everything.
Man, a little bit. I like history. I like a lot of self-help stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, mostly I don't like mostly mostly kind of self-help, personal development type books.
Okay. What is a book that comes to your mind as far as that made you an impact? Of course, it's always different topics, but sometimes there's a book during the journey that you can say like, oh man, that book when it hit me, it really opened my eyes for certain things. What is a book that comes to your mind?
One of the best books I've ever read is the book called The Biology of Belief, Dr. Bruce Lipton.
Never heard.
So it's a really, really interesting book. And what the premise of the book is really how your thoughts affect your biology. And I'll just give you a quick example. If you think about sucking on a lemon, right? A lot of times your mouth will start to water. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there's no lemon there, but just your thoughts cause a physiological reaction. Or if you walk into your house at night and you think that there's some intruder in your house, right? Your heart rate starts to elevate. You start to sweat, your hair starts to stand up. And so controlling your thoughts really has a big impact on your physiology. And so, that's one of the things that was really profound for me, is understanding like how it's not just the physical things, but your mental state that can affect your health, right? And so it's an amazing book. It's about epigenetics, and one of the first guys that really started to understand epigenetics and the expression of your genes and how your thoughts can affect the expression of your genes.
Any book on business, entrepreneurship that comes to your mind?
On business entrepreneurship, there's a book called The Hoops Whisperer, which was a really interesting book, awesome book and it's about a guy that never made it in the NBA, never really played college basketball, but is a coach to all of the most elite basketball players in the world. And it was really interesting when I was reading the book, because he talks about the drills and the things that he would do to help each player achieve their maximum potential. And he would talk about how he would see different weaknesses in their game, and he would create specific drills
that's cool
to help them to be able to develop those aspects of their game. And so as a teacher, that was really, really helpful for me, because I was already doing a lot of that stuff. But, and a lot of it I had learned from Hickson, how Hickson would train himself, but that just kind of reinforced it. Like, wow, man, this guy it was just a guy that was passionate about basketball. His name's Eden Ravine. And, he was coaching players like Kobe and Michael Jordan and all these other huge name basketball players. They would hire him to be their personal coach.
That's awesome. So we're getting close to the end of the interview. So I want to know, what are you currently excited about? What is going on? I know that now some of the states are clearing up more. So what you got?
Yeah, so I'm excited to start traveling and teaching again. This is the first month that I really feel like I'm back to work and back to teaching. So I'm going to be in Albany, New York next week. Then the week after that, I'll be in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. The week after that, I'll be in St. Louis with Todd Fox. I think you interviewed Todd Fox.
Yes.
So I'm kind of, it's nice to be back on the road teaching again and sharing my jiu-jitsu, and also looking forward to doing some camps again here in the United States. So I'm looking to do probably a camp here in Las Vegas, maybe in September or October.
Cool. Right on.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much for your time, and appreciated the interview. And if people, so tell me website so people can look for and learn more about you. So go ahead.
Yeah, my website's hiddenjujitsu.com. And if people want to find me, I'm on Facebook. That's kind of where I'm the most active, on Facebook. I have a fan page and a personal page there, so you can just follow me on Facebook. or go to my website, hiddenjujitsu.com, is where I basically have all of my instructional content, all the material, for me, that I just try to share all of the knowledge that I learned from Rickson through my website.
Awesome.
And also on YouTube, my YouTube channel, Hidden Jiu-Jitsu. So I'm just starting to be a lot more active there, like you said, with the mat chats and stuff like that, just kind of trying to share people's own personal journey and their experience and how jiu-jitsu has benefited their life in different ways through that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And if you guys have any suggestion for content, anything, send me a message. Most of the time I'm on Instagram. It'd be easier to find me, Gustavo Dantas, BJJ. And I see y'all soon. Os.
Thanks, Gustavo.
Thank you.
We're glad you were able to join us for this episode of the BJJ Mental Coach Podcast, but the lesson doesn't end here. Watch the videos and download the audio of the 10 mental mistakes BJJ competitors make and how to avoid them for free when you subscribe to the bjjmentalcoach.com. Don't miss the chance to find out what might be holding you back from being your best self on and off the mat. That's the bjjmentalcoach.com.